Imagine going to bed on the most luxurious ship ever built and waking up a few hours later knowing you were going to die. That's exactly what happened on April 14th, 1912. This is the true story of the final hours of the Titanic. At 11:40 p.m., most passengers were asleep. The ocean was unusually calm. The night was moonless, and the crew couldn't see very far ahead. Then suddenly, the lookout spotted something. An iceberg, directly in front of the ship. The warning bell rang 3 times. The bridge received the message, "Iceberg right ahead." The crew reacted immediately. Hard to port. Engines reversed, but it was already too late. The iceberg scraped along the side of the ship. The collision lasted only seconds. Most passengers barely noticed. Some felt a small vibration. Others slept through the entire thing. A few even joked about it. One passenger later said it felt like someone had dragged a giant finger across the ship's hull. Nobody was panicking. Nobody thought they were in danger. After all, this was the Titanic. The ship many people believed was unsinkable. But below deck, a disaster was already unfolding. The iceberg had ripped open multiple compartments. Seawater was rushing in, thousands of tons every minute. The ship's designer was called in to assess the damage. He ran the calculations. Then he delivered a verdict nobody wanted to hear. The Titanic would sink, and it would sink in less than 3 hours. At first, even the captain struggled to believe it, but the math was undeniable. The ship was doomed. Now came the impossible problem. There weren't enough lifeboats, not even close. There were over 2,200 people on board, but enough lifeboat space for only about half. Nobody had planned for the impossible, and now the impossible was happening. Around midnight, crew members quietly began waking passengers. Many refused to leave their cabins. Why would they? The ship still looked perfectly normal. The lights were on, the music was playing, the decks were calm. Some passengers laughed at the idea of getting into a tiny lifeboat in the freezing dark. They felt safer on the giant ship. That decision would cost many of them their lives. At 12:45 a.m., the first lifeboat was lowered. It had room for 65 people. Only 28 got in. Many seats left empty. Nobody understood how serious the situation was. As the hours passed, the front of the ship slowly dipped lower. The angle became impossible to ignore. Now people were starting to realize this wasn't a drill. This wasn't precautionary. The Titanic was dying. The band continued playing, not because they were ordered to, but because they believed music might help keep people calm. Imagine hearing music drifting across the freezing Atlantic while thousands of people realized they might never see home again. By 2 a.m., chaos had taken over. Lifeboats were leaving. Families were being separated. People were desperately searching for loved ones. The temperature was below freezing. The ocean itself was even colder. Falling into that water meant death in minutes. Then came the final moments. The bow disappeared beneath the surface. The stern rose higher and higher into the air. Passengers clung to railings. Some prayed, some screamed, some jumped. Then, the ship broke apart. After more than 2.5 hours of fighting to stay alive, the Titanic vanished beneath the ocean. But the nightmare wasn't over. More than 1,000 people were now stranded in the freezing Atlantic. The water temperature was so cold that many died within minutes. The cries for help echoed across the darkness. Survivors in nearby lifeboats would later describe those sounds as something they never forgot for the rest of their lives. Then, one by one, the voices stopped. Silence returned to the ocean by sunrise. The largest ship on Earth was gone. More than 1,500 people had died, and the world woke up to news that seemed impossible. The unsinkable ship had sunk, all because of one iceberg and a few terrible hours in the dark.